All right. Okay, so Lori came up to me just a little bit ago, and she said when I revealed the face of the baby Jesus, she said she so hoped I was going to get to something, and she said you did, but I don't know if I did or not. So Lori, stand up and tell me what you said, and you have to speak loudly.
All right, well that's not a problem.
Okay.
I said when you revealed the Jesus' face that I really was hoping that you get to the point that is Christ looking to us and seeing how beautiful we are, because Christ is like our child, and he looks to us and sees the imperfect, no issues, and just the beautifulness.
Yes.
Just like a child.
Yes. So yes, that is. Thank you so much, and it's so true. He looks up to us, and we're so beautiful. And it's not because he doesn't know. So we can't say that about ourselves. Father was talking about the little story about the nursing. It was one of those times. Okay, so I've had 6 kids, right? And I breastfed them all, in spite of the fact that I have virtually no window boxes. They still work fine. I'm just saying. And so I can't remember which baby it is. You know, I had just given birth to somebody, and I was nursing them. But it was like 5 or 6 weeks after I had the baby, and Brad said, oh, you know, let's go out to dinner. And so you go out to dinner the first time. It's so exciting, get all dolled up and everything. But you have to go out to dinner when it's you and the old people, because it's like 5:30 when you go out, you know, because you have to get back to put all of the rest of the kids in bed, because there's no babysitter on the planet that actually puts them to bed, unless, of course, you pay them $1 million or something. So Brad and I went to this great little French bistro in Austin called Chez Nous. It's très chic. So, but it's actually really great, and the owner's a good friend of mine. But we were getting up to leave at about the time, you know, like 8 o'clock, right? When all of the very shishi people are coming in. And so Brad and I are standing up, and we're talking to Robert. And this whole table of very chic people come, you know, this sort of black turtleneck thing, and men that have belts that cost the same amount as a house, you know, things like that. This happens in Austin, let me promise. So there's like 8 of them at this table, and you know how at the corner of your eye you can tell that people are watching you? So I'm standing there, I can tell they're all looking at me, right? And I think, right, that it's because I'm looking fabulous and I'm speaking French to Robert. But it was because one of my breast pads had wandered out and was on the outside of my sweater. It's a little nipple mark and everything. And so I just kind of looked down. Robert bursts into laughter. I just grabbed and I shoved it back in. So now every time I'm thinking I'm looking some kind of cute, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's tucked in the back. My kids make fun of me because now, you know, I'm like becoming the age of Methuselah, you know, and my skin does this, right? You pinch the knuckle and it stays, right? People will say to me, oh, Sally, you're just dehydrated. No, I'm not dehydrated, I'm old, and my skin is loose now. And I went not too long ago to the OBGYN for your basic checkup and said, okay, so when is this whole menopause thing going to start happening? And he goes, well, you've still got a few years left, you're all right. I said, so, wait, just a moment. So Brad and I practice natural family planning, right, which... if you have ADD, isn't really planning. It's just kind of hope and prayer. And which is also the reason that I have 6 children. And Brad, every now and then, has a nervous facial twitch because he doesn't even believe in God, and he didn't really get the part where he was going to have all of these children and they were going to keep showing up. Anyway, so I said, so what you're saying to me is that I could get pregnant now. And he started laughing, and I said, so first of all, that's like a Guinness World Book of Record thing. And second of all, I'd have to get a sling for my uterus, because like it just now my skin does this. And when you have your first baby, you don't even look like you're pregnant until you're like 7 months. But by the time you have baby number 6, you're pregnant like 8 minutes, and you always have to wear the jeans with the stretchy part in the front, Plus, I don't know about you, but when I started having my children some years ago, all of the pregnant clothes were those little dresses with the little collars that all looked like, I don't know what happened. Heavens. Anyway, so I came home and I told my husband, who was only sort of semi-amused, and my son Sam was there, he said, so wait, does that mean you could get pregnant now? I said, well, yeah, I mean, technically I could. He said, okay, if that happens, when you pick me up at school, make sure that you don't get out of the car. Because when I was pregnant with Sam, who is hopefully the caboose, otherwise it'll be so embarrassing, my son Charlie, who's my second, who's 30 now, I was at a basketball game at his senior year at the classical Christian school the kids have gone to. So we've done that, and then I've homeschooled and blah, blah, all of that, right? So I was at this basketball game, but it was started by these very lovely sort of evangelical Christian types, and we were the only Catholic family there. But I loved the trivium, right? Logic, rhetoric, and all of that kind of thing. And so I figured I could help with the Catholic part. This is a school where in 4th grade, the kids learn church history, and they start at the Reformation. There could be, I don't know, just saying 1,500 years of church before that, just mentioning it. Anyway, and they can't ignore me because I have 2 master's degrees in theology, which I love. And I went to Yale, which is also interesting because one of them at one point said, this is the ADD in action, by the way, said, so you went to Yale? I said, yes. And she said, how was it going to a pagan university? Wow, that's a tough question to answer. I especially like the class on human sacrifice. Anyway, so I'm at the basketball game, right? I'm 9 months pregnant. One of these guys that started the school came in, and he apparently had not gotten the message, and here I am, the size of New Jersey. And he looks at me and goes, well, Sally, you sure are a good witness to your faith. I'm like, thanks! At the same year, I had Sam on the Feast of St. Nicholas, the beginning of December, and my daughter Cecilia, who was 5 then, and this little blonde, fabulous girl, came up to me, and we had just watched Home Alone, and you know that part when there's that old movie and it goes, you filthy animal, this kind of thing. So Cecilia comes up to me and she pretends, she looks at me and she says, Mom, you're a filthy animal. And she's trying to be funny. So I pretend like I'm all hurt. Oh no, I'm a filthy animal. And she goes, no, Mom, wait. You're not a filthy animal, you're and you can watch her little mind going, you're a fat princess. Which was so much better. Anyway, all right, so back to how beautiful you are. Here's why it's important. It's so important to come to the truth of how it is he sees us, because otherwise we can't find joy. He wants for us to live our life full of joy. Do you know Friedrich Nietzsche? Anyone? No, Friedrich, he's dead now, so you can't know him. Anyway, he was a great atheist philosopher, and he said at one point, I could believe in Christianity if Christians looked resurrected. Isn't that true? Do we look resurrected? If someone knows us, do they say, oh my gosh, she's resurrected. She's living in the resurrection. But you know that's what he has for us? That's what he intends. You know, we as Catholics, so much of the time we are focused on his sacrifice on the cross. And that is so beautiful, and we could spend the rest of our lives talking about that. But it didn't end there, did it? It was that morning, the wee hours of the morning, and the stone is rolled away. Actually, in one version, it's basically exploded. It's gone. And he steps into the garden of resurrection. And everything is different. Everything is beautiful. It's alive and real and vibrant and beautiful. And that's what he has for us. That's what he wants for us. So how come we don't live there? How come we're not filled that way? There's a very beautiful book, by the way, written by a lovely Quaker, I think she's Quaker woman, named Anne Voskamp. And the book is called 1,000 Gifts. I really recommend it. If you want a book study that you could do together. It's so, so beautiful. She actually later ended up producing some DVD series, so you actually can do it as a book study, and they have the little, 20-minute video or whatever as well. And those are beautifully done, too. But in it, she ends up having a tragedy in her childhood. So I'll just tell you at the outset, the disclaimer portion is that the first chapter is a tough one, but just keep going. Don't persevere, because then it becomes beautiful. So there's a tragedy, and then time leaps forward. She lives on a farm in the middle of nowhere, Canada. Her husband is a pig farmer. She's got 6 children, and she homeschools them. She believes all of the right things. She's deeply embedded in Scripture. She does all of the right things. And she has no joy. And she realizes she longs for joy. And by the way, if we discover that we are longing for something, don't make the mistake of thinking that you're producing that longing. Do you know what it is? It's a prayer that he's planted in you. That longing is his desire for you, which in this moment of your life has bubbled to consciousness, bubbled to the surface, and you've discovered it. That's very important to know, because if he's planted it there and not just me, would he plant a longing in you and then deprive you of the grace to make it true? He's not sadistic, is he? So there's no way that he could plant a longing in you. Saint Therese of Lisieux says this very beautifully. Well, that's what she says. She says that he would never plant something in you and then deprive you of the grace to arrive at it. I remember one time I was having to go give a talk at this parish, and it was like for this confirmation class, and there were like 60 people in the class, but it had been one of those weeks, right? So everybody had gotten strep throat. I had had many acid washes over the course of the week. And usually I prepare and I think and pray and all of this kind of thing. I had had no time to do any of that. I literally just got in the car and drove to the parish. I didn't even know what I was supposed to be speaking on, right? So I'm driving down the highway, going to the parish, praying like a crazy woman. Okay, Lord, look, I need you to be with me now. If you need this to be a time of humility, I accept. But I want you to know that in the end, it's you who is going to look bad. Just saying. So apparently that technique worked. Because I got to the class and I casually mentioned to the woman that was organizing, so, it's so exciting this week. What exactly are we talking about? And she had this sort of panic look and then told me. And then I just did what I could. At the end, there have only been 2 times in the course of all of the years of talking that I've done that I can ever remember anything that anybody says afterwards, even though it means so much to me. Like it gives me life and breath to hear and to see the gift that people want to give to me. It's so beautiful. So I can remember faces, but I can't remember what people say. And I think it's because the beloved knew that it would be so easy to go home and think, yes, it was that way, wasn't it? So he just goes, well, we're just going to erase all of this. So there's absolutely no temptation for me to go home and think I'm some kind of swell, because then a breast pad will be outside, and God only knows. So and this was one of the times, afterwards, this man came up, and his wife had drugged him to the class because she really wanted him to have an encounter with Christ in the sacraments of the church. And he had kind of come because it was too costly not to, all of the ways the wife was going to, make their home a mausoleum, not paying attention, not looking at him while she passes a Christ, the things that we can do, which are like holding a gun to someone's head. So he had come. So he came up to me after the class, and he wanted to ask me a question, but he's going to ask a question the way men ask questions, which means that you're going to have a 5-minute preamble first. So he was making his statement, and then he stopped, and the bottoms of his eyes were all full of water, and he said to me, Sally, is there any way that I could love Jesus as much as you do? So beautiful. And I said, oh, Glenn, do you know that you wouldn't even ask me that question? It wouldn't even occur to you to ask that question, except that he is already making it true in you. You wouldn't have that longing except that the beloved was longing for you, loving you. And all of a sudden you came to that moment where you just said, oh my gosh, I want to love Jesus that way. But all it really is the truth of his longing, which Glenn stumbled upon in that little evening. If there's a longing in you, please know that he planted it there. He planted it. And so, always, it's like, where was I before I went on my little journey over to the side paths? He made us to be in this life of love. Okay, so Anne, there was no joy in her life, and she stumbled on this Greek word, Eucharisteo. I secretly think that I would just need like a weekend, and not me, but maybe Father Tim could just shove her right into the church. She would be a Catholic in like 3 days because she's so close right now. So she stumbled on the word for Eucharist. And guess what's embedded in that word? 3 other Greek words. So Eucharist means thanksgiving, right? Embedded in that word is chara and charis. Chara means grace. Charis means joy. By grace, through thanksgiving, we discover joy. So she started writing this little list of thanksgivings, little ways that she discovered thanks. I think one of the first few are not like, thank you for my husband, thank you for the children, which is lovely, but standing at the sink doing the dishes, having the sun shine in, and noticing that there were rainbows on the edges of all of the bubbles. Number 32, I think, is they've gone into town and they're at the store, and there's an old man standing in the Hallmark card aisle, and he's taking out each card and he's reading it very carefully and then putting it back. So she's making this list, right, of 1,000 things for which she is going to give thanks in the hope that it can produce joy. Number 32 on her list is old men looking for words just perfect. So beautiful, yes? The beauty of the call, the beauty of the call to joy. It is the movement of his heart, the movement of the Holy Spirit. It's what it is he desires for us. St. Paul, in the second letter of the Corinthians, he references, do you remember when Moses got the law from, and the baby is so beautiful, so we're not going to have any little qualms, right, about the little noises. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I hate it when everybody's going, oh my God, the baby's making noise. Well, yeah, because the baby's alive. So that's what we want. Plus, I've noticed that very often they make noise like the Holy Spirit's going, yes, amen. That's how I take it. So Moses comes down from the mountain, and he's been up there for 40 days, and God has written his law with his own finger. And there's so much to say about how God brings his law. And the law was never meant, remember, the people had just been freed from slavery, freed from captivity, right? And they're at the bottom of the mountain, and Moses comes down to give the law which God is going to give to them. And by the way, it is not God going, and now I've freed you from slavery, and now here are the rules. Right? Because like every teenager on the planet thinks, well, all of the rules are this little bars on your cage. No. The law was a gift of love from the Father to keep us free. This very stunning illustration of this is one time I was teaching senior theology at a Catholic high school, and there was a couple who had been seeing each other forever in teenage years, right? So like for 8 months or something. But you can't discount the power of what they're feeling, right? It's very powerful in some respects, sometimes more powerful because they haven't developed mechanisms for self-protection, whatever. They clearly were sleeping with each other. One morning I get to the classroom, and the young man sitting on the floor outside of the door, and I look at him and his face is just pale and anguished. So it's clear that he needs to talk to me. So we go in, We sit down on the floor behind my desk so that nobody can see. And he just bursts into tears. And he just found out that his girlfriend was pregnant, right? So, at a moment in which they felt terribly, terribly free and adult, they made this decision to sleep with each other. But how free was that boy who really did love her? How free was he now? You see, the law was meant to keep us free so that we could live in the hugeness of truth and of love. And when we break the law, the beloved is not up there going, well, and now we are going to send the punishment phase. Now, how it is he's able to love us is diminished. That's the real question. And by the way, that's why the Pharisees didn't recognize Jesus as the Messiah when he came. Because for the Pharisees, it was always about the letter of the law. It was a contract between them and God. And they had no notion that the truth of God's law was the law of love. So that when Jesus came, even though he was raising people from the dead, they still didn't recognize him because they never knew that the law was love in the first place. So when Jesus comes, and he says in Matthew 5, I have come not to abolish the law, but to complete it. The gift of love which completes in us the truth of his love for us, right? So, when Moses comes down the mountains, he's shiny because he's been in the presence of God, right? And the people tell him, "Oi, veil your face. Veil your face." It's before large Gucci sunglasses, right? So they're like, "Veil your face, we can't take it." Which, by the way, people will tell you to do if you live love. They'll tell you that you need to be more moderate in your faith. Don't listen to them. St. Paul says, now this is the Lord. This Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Freedom. And we, with our unveiled faces, reflecting like mirrors the brightness of the Lord, all grow brighter and brighter as we become the image that we reflect. This is the work of the Lord, who is Spirit. To become more and more shiny, more and more bright with the reflection of his image and his love, his light. So you know people, don't you, who are shiny? They're shiny with his reflected image and so full of joy. That's what he wants for us. He wants this joy for us. So how can we accomplish this in our life? We have to stand in a different place. Because where we stand very often as Catholics and as Christians is, this is how we have to be righteous in front of the Lord. We have to, and I'm sorry, I took a decongestant this morning, so there's no liquid left in my body. And so I keep having to put stuff on. Otherwise, I'm like all dried up. So here's what happens. We stand there and we try to be good. And how does that work out for us? Have you ever gone to confession and had to confess the same thing? Why is that? Is God not powerful enough? Are we not forgiven? Did we just not mean it enough? Why? There's lots of answers to that question. But Father Jacques Philippe, in his very beautiful little book, Searching for and Maintaining Peace of Heart, says something about spiritual warfare. So let's keep in mind, by the way, evil exists. And he doesn't want you to be filled with joy. He doesn't want you to become more and more shiny. He doesn't want you to know or believe that you're this beautiful. He wants to keep you small and dark. And he wants you to continually feel like a disappointment. However, I'll say that though we must be aware that evil is active and intentional, Jesus is stronger. Jesus already has the victory. Jean-Pierre de Caussade, in his very beautiful book, Abandonment to Divine Providence, says that everything that happens to us is either God's active will or his passive will. And everything he permits for the sake of his love, and it is mercy. So even if it's initiated by evil, it doesn't matter, because you know why? Because the beloved can transform the circumstance into something that draws him near. Look at the greatest evil that has ever happened in the world. The death of the Son of God. What did God do with that? It became the saving act of all of the world. That's what God does. So evil can move, but he's nothing next to the beloved. If we keep our eyes on the beloved, evil does not have the victory. Okay, so Father Philippe says, quoting from Francis de Sales, the devil does his utmost to abolish peace in our hearts, because he knows that God abides in peace, and it is in peace that he will accomplish great things. So it so often happens, Father says, that in our daily life we end up fighting the wrong battle, or rather, we are fighting on the wrong battlefield. We are fighting on a terrain in which the devil subtly drags us. And he will have the victory every single time. Do you know what that battlefield is? Here is what it looks like. That we are trying to vanquish our faults. That we're trying never to succumb to temptation. That we are trying not to have weaknesses or shortcomings. We're striving to be righteous. But on such a terrain, we are sure to be vanquished. Because who among us can pretend that we're not going to stumble? How many times have I said that I would love my beautiful husband, though he doesn't believe in God, and this is not me being a victim, but he hates my faith. Every time I go to speak, it costs me. He doesn't have anywhere to put all of the difficult things which has happened. And so a year and a half ago, my daughter Cecilia had brain surgery because she has very bad epilepsy, and we were trying to manage her seizures, and she had brain surgery, and it didn't work, and she ended up being asleep for 10 months, and my other daughter, Sarah, my oldest, became engaged to what seemed like a very nice fellow, and they put the cart before the horse, and she got pregnant, and the young man went around the bend and began a heroin addiction. And so my beautiful girl came home broken and weeping, and she was living with us, and I had to care for little Claire, and Sarah is wonderful and beautiful, but she couldn't in that moment take up the truth of being a mother. So I was trying to be a mother to a little baby again, a mother to a very wounded, heartbroken girl, a mother to a girl who just maybe in a 24-hour day, she was out of bed an hour. The rest of the time I had to take her meals. And Brad, because he didn't believe in God, didn't have anywhere to put this. So he thought that it must be my fault that these things were happening. And so he left us. And my son Sam was, I watched his little heart shatter. And my daughter Cecilia, who had just started to get up because we had addressed the neurological problems with an anti-narcoleptic drug, and the day that he left, she went back to bed, and it was 3 more months before she was up again. And the beloved was asking me to love this very wounded man, to not shut him out and say, all right, you have rejected us, we reject you. But to hold him in my heart, to intercede for him, to be a bridge of love for him. Though I was shattered, I found out that he was leaving on Ash Wednesday a year ago. And I couldn't go to Mass. I just lay in my bed weeping and saying, I offer you the ashes of my hopes for myself, for my family. He came back about 6 months ago, and we're trying to reform and recreate, right? God was asking me to do something that I stumbled so many times, and I held myself accountable in so many ways for how many bitter things did I say to him. A week after he left, he called and he said, how's Cecilia? And I said, well, she's still in bed. I've gone up 3 or 4 times to see if I could get her to come down, but she's not willing. And he said, well, let me know if I can help. And I didn't hold my tongue. I just started to laugh, and I said, no, you can't help. You're living in a wonderful little apartment downtown, and having your little life with your new truck and all of that kind of thing, and no, you can't help. In that moment, I stumble, I don't say, thank you for your offer, and if I think of something, I'll text or I'll let you know. Right? So on the battlefield in which we think that we are not supposed to stumble or succumb to temptation, we will always fall. But it is not that which the beloved asks of us. Because as he says in Psalm 103, he knows of what we are made. He knows that we are dust. So how could he say to us, be righteous, when he knows that we're not going to be? So on the battlefield in which we think that we have to strive for righteousness, we are always going to fail. Evil is always going to win. Every single time we feel that crushing disappointment in ourselves, we can know that we were standing on that battlefield. The Curé d'Ars, St. John Vianney, said that the most powerful weapon evil has is disappointment. Because it is through disappointment that he can blunt our efforts and tell us, don't bother trying. You're just going to screw up. Well, guess what? You are going to screw up. Me too. That's the certainty. So what's the other battlefield? You know who was the great doctor of the other battlefield? Saint Therese of Lisieux. Here's a description of the other battlefield. It's so beautiful. She gives this little story. She's writing Father Bellier, and she gives this little story. So I kind of embellish it because it makes more sense to me. There are two children, and it's raining outside. It's raining outside, and their father is home, but he's down the hall in his study. And they're playing ball in the living room, right? And they know they're not supposed to play ball in the living room. And sure enough, the ball ricochets and ends up breaking a window. The first kid runs away. This is the little one who is standing on the battlefield. And what he thinks is that the father is going to be disappointed and angry. So he's going to run. The other little one is Saint Therese. She takes off down the hall. She blows open the door to her father's study. She launches herself across the room and into his arms. And she says, "Kiss me and tell me that you love me." Which he does. And then she tells him about the window. But here's the truth. He holds her even more tightly and kisses her even more tenderly. Because what he sees in her is a little one who trusts so much in his love and in his mercy that instead of running for him, she runs to him. She runs to his arms. She is so convinced of how it is he sees her and loves her that even her sin, even her failings, are just an opportunity to launch herself into the arms of love more deeply. The greatest gift that we can give Jesus is the truth of our smallness and of our weakness. He wants it more than anything else. You know why? Because in that moment, he gets to teach us about the truth of his love for us. If we go and we do something good and we go and feed the hungry or, any number of the beautiful things that we can do, isn't it always muddied with the little thought that comes creeping in, you see that I am good? But in the moment in which we encounter the truth of our smallness and of our ugliness, to encounter love, then, doesn't that convince you of how it is he loves you? When Brad was trying to get sober, I was holding myself up as the great hero of our life story. Because I was taking care of all of the kids, and Brad was a functional drunk, and I always forget to mention this. He will be sober 17 years come December. But at that moment, he was still struggling, and he was a functional drunk, so he was working, and then he would come home and start drinking, and then he would just kind of disappear. And I was getting up so early in the morning to pray that God would change Brad. And so, dangerous prayer, I'm just saying, because how the beloved often responds to our prayer that someone else should change is he shows us the truth of ourselves and why we should be praying for mercy. He showed me how I had made myself the hero of this story. He showed me that even though I wasn't openly angry or mean, that my husband, this disease was turning him to dust inside. And I just turned away, never with my words, but just with being busy. Busy with 5 children at that point, a brand new baby. Busy, too busy to love this wounded man who was turning to dust. The beloved was so lovely to me in that moment of discovery how small and selfish I was. Here's why. Because it wasn't until I saw the truth of myself that I really realized, and I already was in the middle of my 2nd master's degree in theology, okay? So it wasn't until then that I discovered how much I needed Jesus as my Savior to save me from the smallness, the crippling smallness and selfishness of myself, to look at me and see me. It was then that I stumbled on a reading by a mystic, all sorts of, ways to think about that or describe it. But I'll just tell you, this woman, Maria, believed that Jesus came to speak to her about his daily life. I don't know whether any of it is true, except this I know is true with absolute certainty, because I read something very similar to this in St. Josepha Menendez. I just think the way it was described in Maria's is much more beautiful. And we have to do just a little moment of theology, or metaphysics actually, and talk, which seems terrifying, but it's not. It's about time, and we live in chronological time, right? So day by day, week by week, year by year, time in a linear way from the beginning to the end of our life. God penetrates, of course, chronological time, but his time, kairos, the Greek word for God's time, the best way to describe it is that every moment in the past, anything that has ever happened, and every moment that is in the future, anything that ever will happen, exists in the divine present for God. So, right now in him is this moment. Right now in him was the moment you were born. Right now in him is the moment you had your first Holy Communion. Right now in him is the moment that at a very old age, surrounded by many people you love, you take your last breath and pass through the membrane of our incarnation into the arms of love. All of that is now. It also means that the things that happened 2,000 years ago are happening now. Now. And this is part of the power of the Mass. The sacrifice on the altar is a participation in the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. It is happening now, if we only have the eyes to see. Here's why that's important. Maria asked Jesus, "What were you thinking about in the Garden of Gethsemane in the beginning of your passion?" And here's what he said to her. And I think this is one of the most deeply true things, and it saved my life. Because it helped me to stand on the battlefield where there was life and where he would get the victory every single time. Every time he would have the victory, and me with him. Here's what Jesus said. "And if you would, will you close your eyes and let him speak this to you? Your name, I whispered over and over to myself. Your name was for me light coming back, life coming back, strength coming back. When I thought that the tortures were too great and I couldn't bear them any longer, I whispered your name over and over again to myself so that I would have the strength to die. Oh, my blessed one, since then I saw you. Since then I carried you in my heart. And when the time came for you to come onto the earth, I leaned out of heaven to accompany your coming, rejoicing at the thought that you were finally being born into the world. Oh, my beloved one, the comfort of the dying Christ. As I hung upon the cross, I saw before me my mother, the pious women, and the beloved disciple. But my eyes also beheld you, and my eyes closed thus, happy to be closed, because they had saved you, you who is the love of my heart. When we go to receive him in the Eucharist, it is our name on his lips. Your name that he whispered over and over again to give him the strength to die. You he's longing for. You he's waiting for. Can anything separate us from his love? Anything? Can our pitiful thoughts about ourselves separate him from us? Can our pitiful sins separate us? No. Please become aware of the battlefield that every single one of us has been taught to stand on. Let him fashion for you a new home on the battlefield in which you are certain to have the victory. Certain to have the victory of his love and of his intention, in which he will use every stumbling, every imperfection, and every sin. He'll use every single one to draw you more and more deeply into his heart. That's his intention. That's his joy. Saint Therese says that when we acknowledge our smallness and our sin, so we're not calling it something else, and we're not saying that it's not important. We have courage in calling it what it is. But when we do this and we offer it to him, when we say to him, "You see that I am just a small girl, and that I can't hold my tongue sometimes. I can't be patient when you want me to be. I want to be, but you see how small I am. You must gather me into your arms and send an elevator for me, like Therese says, send an elevator because I can't make it myself. Do you see what Therese says is that when we come to him there, we catch the Father by his heart. We catch the Father by his heart. And when we have done that, he will take us into victory. He will do it. We just have to say our little yes. So, once we become aware that we should stand somewhere else, then we just say, Beloved, will you just teach me to stand here? Will you help me to move into this new place? Will you teach me to let me love you? It will be the most powerful and beautiful prayer of your life.